Adobe Acrobat Studio, your new foundation. Use PDF Spaces to generate a presentation. Grab your docs, your permits, your moves. AI levels up your pitch, gets it in a groove. Choose a template with your timeless cool. Come on now, let's flex those tools. Draft, design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that, do that, do that with Acrobat.
Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some from my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop up to 40% off site-wide, plus an extra 10% off every order and a free professional measure happening right now at Blinds.com.
Everyone needs to take care of their mental health, even running back Bijan Robinson.
When I'm on the field and feeling the pressure, I usually just take a deep breath. When I'm just breathing and seeing what's in front of me, everything just slows down. It just makes me feel great before I run the play.
Just like Bijan, we all need a strong mental game on and off the field. Make a game plan for your mental health at loveyourmindplaybook.org.
Love your mind.
Brought to you by the Huntsman Mental Health Foundation, the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, and the Ad Council.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome once again to all you lovely people to How We're the Podcast. And it's a busy week in the world of Sunderland AFC because we're building up to not only the visit of Burnley on Monday night, but we also have the transfer window slamming shut because that is of course the correct terminology. And this happens an hour before we kick off against Burnley in front of the cameras at the Stadium of Light. And it's already a huge transfer window, especially in Sheffield, where I live, because I've been laughing my back off at how gutted the Wednesday fans have been to lose Barry Bannon. I've talked to a lot of them on the school run this week, so that has given me a lot of joy. But anyway, we thought we'd gather together a few days before the end of the window to try and provide some thoughts on who might leave and what type of players we might bring in, if anyone at all. So first up to look into their crystal ball, and it's been a while since I last did a pod with him, so I'm very pleased to welcome Ant Waterson. Hello, Ant.
Hello. I'm very, very shocked at you laughing at Sheffield Wednesday fans, by the way. On their grief, bottom of the league, transfer embargoes left, right and centre. Barry Bannon's gone. Chris is laughing at him. I love it.
Oh, man. The amount of the stick I took that year when we were in the semi-final with them, and they said for weeks and weeks what they were going to do to us and all this sort of stuff. I think they deserve a few back. But anyway, I was going to say I feel a bit lucky to be graced with your presence, mate, because since I last spoke to you, you did some stuff on the TV because Sky Sports paid you a visit to talk about Reggie. So how was that?
Yeah, it was excellent. We filmed in a little like Airbnb in Seaburn. It was the same kind of filming what we did when I did the one at the start of the season as well. It was class. Really, really good. So yeah, I am available if any TV or radio stations are looking. I am free. I am available. I don't charge much.
What you mean? Even if they need like an extra on curry or something like that, you're available?
Oh yeah. I'm open. I'm open to anything.
Open to anything.
Make an attraction. Anything.
Well, to be fair, I noticed you were wearing your shorts on that one, to be fair. So I wondered, did you turn up thinking it was that or something?
It was very, very warm. When we filmed it there, it was literally in August. It was very warm.
Well, I was going to say that they booked an Airbnb. I hope you checked some credentials that some weirdo was just getting in touch and booking an Airbnb for you.
No, yeah, it was all done above board. Nothing happened.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So where can we find it? Is it still out there, mate?
Yeah, it's Premier League Stories. It's on BT or TNT, whatever they're called now. And I think it's available on Sky as well. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I watched it first time around, so I might dig it out every so often just to see your lovely face on the box there. And
I've got it recorded. I've watched it every time I want to treat myself up.
Is it one of them? Whenever you get a visit to the house, it's like, oh, I'll just stick something on the telly. Oh, hang on. Oh, I didn't realise I'd stick something on. But anyway, next up, we have someone who had to leave early on the pod during the week when we were talking about Dan Neil. So we might have a chance to finish that thought because we have Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, mate. Just if anyone's wondering, I am not available for Naked Attraction and I am not available to meet in any Airbnbs. Don't even ask.
But yeah, just to make it clear, Ant is. But anyway, you had to leave early the other day. I'm assuming. Did you get to see all you had to see on Dan Neil, Andrew?
I think so, but this is just the way things are with Sunderland now. In the past, whenever a player left, people were happy to help them pack their bags and drive them to their new club. Whereas now there's going to be one or two names like Dan Neil, and there might be some other names that come up in the conversation today where you are sorry to see them go, and you want them to do well for themselves because they've always tried hard at Sunderland, and there's a bit of a feeling there. You've got a lot of time for them.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just on the Morecambe game, by the way, because you said you were there. It was like there was a crowd of like 2,300 hardy souls at Morecambe to watch a Football League trophy game, and you were one of them. So what was your memories of that? Because I think actually looking at it, I'm sure, I'm going from memory now, but I'm sure Dan Neil only came on for the last minute or something in that game.
I think he came on late, and Josh Madgis scored a really good goal that was also in the final stages of the match. My dad was born in Morecambe, so that game had like a little bit of an extra attraction for me. I'm not sure I would have travelled all that way if it was another team. But I went with a good friend of mine who lives over on the northwest side of the country as well. So it was a nice little trip out, and I'd forgotten quite how many young players played in that match. There was a couple of good names you pulled up from the history books there.
Yeah, you've done yourself a disservice there. You could have been like, I was there. I was at Morecambe and the football. And now you're like, oh, well, I had other things. So, Well, look, let's get into the January transfer window. And we were chuckling before we started recording, actually, because we struggled to remember, or at least I did. I had a bit of a mental block about January transfer windows and the history of Sunderland, because the only one I could think of, Andrew, was the Roy Keane one, where he came in as manager and went crazy in the last couple of days. But other than that, I couldn't remember a thing. I've been racking my brains about what we do in that window, and other than that Roy Keane one, I can't remember any that was really big.
No, I think the Roy Keane one is always going to be the one that takes the headlines, because he went crazy in the summer and brought a load of players in. And he did it again in the January. I think in championship terms, he spent a bit of money, and I want to say Stokes came in and Carlos Edwards, and he got a couple of lads from it was Man United. It was Johnny Evans and Danny Simpson, wasn't it? Because they were both brilliant for us.
Yeah, it was.
So one of the
Dwight
reasons...
York, of course, leaving an Australian summer.
Well, of course he did. Got the beautiful Sunderland coastline. He was chomping at the bit to get over here. I think the Roy Keane one is one that people will remember, because not only did we bring big numbers in, but it worked as well. Even players like Stern John, who only came for a short time, when they were here, they contributed. So he seemed to have a bit of a good streak in terms of transfers. It was only later on, wasn't it, when he started bringing the likes of Pascal Chimbonda in, that the problems started on the transfer front.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Ant. You might have had a few more memories than me and Andrew about January transfer windows.
I'll bring you all back to the parents' door. Jermaine Defoe. It's not Jermaine Defoe. It was Jim Matete, but then it was Jermaine Defoe. The best transfer window ever. But no, apart from that, obviously Jermaine Defoe in the first instance, absolutely brilliant. Jan Kirchhoff, got him in January, didn't we?
Yeah,
a nightmare first game, but turned out all right. Lemine Cornet, they were signed on the same day, weren't they? Cornet and Kirchhoff. I'd certainly see him.
That was a good window. You're right, because didn't we bring in Kazri as well with Allardyce?
So. Yeah, and Doy, wasn't it, the striker?
Yes, aye.
Less said about him, the better. Like you.
Yeah,
And lads, now all it takes is a couple of words to get my memory going. We also brought Steve Harper in on loan. Do you remember that? So
Yes, I
yeah,
remember his photograph, and he looked literally the most unhappiest person in the world there. Even the dog agrees with that. He was just like Steve Harper.
I just thought you were throwing your voice there, Ant. But I forgot about that Allardyce one. That was a massive one because actually, if you look at the run we were on an awful run when he had to bring those players in, and I think everyone was surprised that short backed him, weren't they, Ant?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. It was important because I remember it was when he was like, they said, describe your January, wasn't it? He went, shite. and we needed that. We definitely needed that. Obviously, it didn't quite work with Kirchhoff first time around against Spurs. I think was that when Pickford made his debut for us. And it was like, yeah, it was a really poor performance, but then we played Man City, didn't we? And that was Lamine Kone's debut, and Kone absolutely smashed Traore out first. So two Real first minute or so, and I was like, oh, these are all right players here. But yeah, it was, and that was very, very, very important in us staying up that year. So really, really important window there. And Ellis Shaw, probably the last time he had his money in his hands and give us anything, and that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm trying to think anyone else. I'm sure there might have been a fullback, but anyway, can you remember anything else, Andrew?
not from that one. I was gonna just another name that's popped up in my head for a January arrival, but it was a different era. Was Sessegnon? I'm sure we signed him in the winter, and he did well at the start. To be fair to him,
well, that was just after Bent left, wasn't it? In that same window, wasn't it?
That would make sense. Yeah,
it would have been.
I'm sure he went to, because Jan left just before the summer one ended, and we didn't replace him. Then Bent left in January, and then we brought Sis. I think that was how it happened anyway. Somebody can tell us that we're completely wrong. But it does go to show how the January transfer window can be used to kind of turn things around if you do need it. But I wanted to ask you, Andrew, about this one. Because I think all three of us are kind of, we're in the same generation ish. I'll just put that out there. But Andrew, do you think? I mean, we've kind of grown up with it because going back to the old transfer window, I think it was March, the old transfer window, the end of March, something like that. But it's such a there's that much money in the game now, and I'm going to sound like a proper old git here, but there's so much money in the game now. We've just signed someone for probably 3 or 4 million, Tarby, and it's like a bit of a shrug of the shoulders. Now, I remember going back with thinking about under Mick Buxton and that sort of era when we signed Steve Agnew, and it was like for buttons, it was like for 250,000, 300,000, something like that. And I was so excited. I thought it was the best thing ever because we hardly signed players. Then there was Martin Scott, where, Gary Howes went the other way, which I was gutted about. But I thought, that's a massive signing. Darius Kabixi for 100,000 from Aston Villa. Like 100,000. But I was so excited because we hardly bought players back then. Do you think we're a little bit kind of spoilt now?
We are, yeah. I've even heard people say they're disappointed that we've not signed more players this January. And you're like, flipping heck, you've grown up in a different era to me. The Kabitsky one always stands out in my mind because I was a teenager at the time, and you see it in the paper. Sunderland have spent 100 grand, and I remember thinking, "Oh, blimey, you could buy a house with that money." I'm not sure 100 grand would get you much on the housing market now, but if somebody wants
to, that's about it.
Yeah, if somebody wants to give me the 3.5 million we've paid for Tybee, I might find myself a nice little tip with that money nowadays, I think. But yeah, it just seems so crazy to me when the club were paying what I thought was big money back then. But relatively speaking, it was chicken feed. And the numbers as well. Over the summer, when Sunderland would sign a player for 20 million, and then the next question would be, all right then, who's next?
Yeah.
But you'd go months at a time without Sunderland or anybody really bringing players in. Dennis Smith in particular, I think really enjoyed working with the players he had and trying to mold them. So when he did sign a player, you knew for certain that they were what he wanted. Whereas now it's almost as if clubs sometimes sign players, not even with a view to them being in the first team. They get signed as a project or one for the future. So very, very different the way transfers are viewed nowadays.
It was like a parallel universe that when we signed Anton Rogan, Don Goodman and John Byrne, all within a month of Marco Gabardini leaving. I thought we were kind of spending the big bucks then. But Ant, what do you reckon? Do you reckon kind of for the kids now, do you reckon it's lost that bit of excitement just because there's so much money spent everywhere?
I don't think it's got the same, kind of joy and everything like, the Sky Sports News with the yellow ties and all that palaver. I don't think it's got that kind of interest, I don't think, anymore. To be honest, I would be wanting to put it back to what it was. You know what I mean? I really would. For long term, I really do. I think it's just a bit, especially the January one, I think it's a complete waste of time. I don't think anyone really spends that much money anymore, do they? And then all the prices are over-egged, aren't they? You want to sign a player probably worth about 30 million. In January, he's worth about 50 for some reason. And it's like, I don't know. But I do think it's lost its charm. I must admit, Chris.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sticking with you, because you've said, you mentioned the amount of money spent, and you already mentioned the old Allardyce transfer window in January, which helped us out. But what do you reckon the aim of the January transfer window is for most clubs? Because you mentioned the amount of money spent. Looking at 2025, 242 million was spent by Premier League clubs in January, but 3.1 billion was spent in the summer transfer window, which probably tells you a lot. But how do you see clubs using this window? And
I think you look at what City's done. City who've got an absolute bargain in Marquee, absolutely brilliant signing there. That could be somebody who could win them the league because he brings them that little bit of steel at the back, and they've got two defenders out injured. So that's a really, really good signing. I think it's for stuff like, obviously, if players are out of contract or something like that, they can get them for a little bit of a cheap price. But then you look at the other end of the table, and West Ham spent quite a lot of money, haven't they? Signed a couple of strikers. I think they're trying to get a couple over the line. And that could keep them in the division. So I think it's like, when you look at the teams who are in the middle, which is what we are, you don't see too many teams go mental, do you? From say 6th to 14th, people are quite happy with what they've got. If that one player comes along who they need, they'll bring them in. But it's more, I would say, for teams at the bottom who need that player to stay up, or teams at the top who are trying to go and win the league.
Yeah, and I think back to West Ham when Harry Redknapp plucked Paul Kitson and John Hartson out of his back pocket, and it seems similar to that. Just I'm glad we're not in the mix this time around.
Do you remember when they signed Tevez and Mascherano as well?
Yeah.
I mean, all above board. Don't get us wrong. You know what I mean? All above board, those signings, but something like that, and that kept them in the league, didn't it? In the last game of the season when they beat Man United.
Yep, saved us from getting sued there. Thanks, Anne.
How come I can remember some of West Ham's winter transfer windows better than I can Sunderland signings? There's something not right there.
Yeah, actually, they signed they signed Kitson and Hartson. We sound Chris Waddle, but anyway. But so the transfer window, Andrew, looking at obviously the Man City ones that Ant mentioned, Gay and Semenyo, they've spent 85 million. Conor Gallagher to Spurs for 34, Brennan Johnson to Palace for, well, far too much by the looks of it from the game we played against them. But yeah, why is there not a lot of money spent in January? Why are a lot of clubs almost fearful of this window and what they're doing it?
I think it's mainly because it's for quick fixes. A lot of Ant's dead right. A lot of the business seems to be done by teams who are not getting the results they want. So if you're down at the bottom and you're thinking, we can't afford to be relegated here, you probably do go and pay those overinflated fees. There's also, like you say, Brennan Johnson, there's players available who maybe haven't played much this season, particularly with there being a World Cup on the horizon. There might be one or two players who are thinking, I need to be somewhere and be getting games. So they become available. But in general, your longer term thinking and your better value is available over the summer when you've got time to thrash deals out and take stock of where you are. Whereas at this stage of the season, a lot of it is just, it's panic mode, and you'll pay over the odds because you think it'll be worth it long term if it wins you that trophy, or it keeps you in that division.
Yeah. You completely reminded us that it is a World Cup there. Yeah, completely forgot until you mentioned it. But look, before we get into specifically Sunderland for this transfer window, we'll take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Mom, I saw Dylan's dad make dinner. Like, actually cook, and it was straight fire. He said it was Blue Apron Assemble and Bake. All the ingredients showed up pre-chopped, and he just laid it out on a baking sheet, and no cap. Dinner was on the table in like 25 minutes. Apparently, it's chef design, and it has like over 40 grams of protein. That's a lot, right? So maybe we try it. Just saying. You can be the next Dylan's dad. Blue Apron. Get $50 off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code STIR50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And we've talked about the window in general terms, but let's get into Sunderland specifically, because, and I mentioned it in the intro that the timing of the window closing, only an hour before the Burnley game. I mean, do you think that has the possibility of impacting, any sort of late deals that we might do?
I don't think we'll do any. I don't think there'll be many coming in. I've got to be honest. I don't think that. I just can't see us bringing anyone in. I don't think we need anyone in particular, if you know what I mean by that. I think we're all right. Barring a major injury crisis, then I think we're okay.
We'll go through all the positions and we'll talk into it in a minute.
I do think we more outgoings than ingoings, but if it is weird that it's closing an hour before a team's about to play. Well, 2 teams, obviously, because Burnley are probably going to be wanting to make business as well. That really does, it really just, I find that strange. Why can it not just be Sunday? Why is there an extra day, you know what I mean? Or it has to be February the 1st or whatever, you know what I mean? Or February the 2nd. I think that's just stupid. I really do. I think that's really silly. But I think for us, we'll be all right, because I just don't think we'll be very busy anyway. I think if we were wanting to make some signings that have been done already, and I think they'd put, like I say, maybe one to come in. I don't know. But but it is, in any terms, I think it's really daft that it closes an hour before 2 teams are about to play football. Like.
Yeah, it is a strange one, Andrew. And look, I wouldn't disagree with anyone who might turn around and say, well, your business, you shouldn't leave your business until the last second. But, you think about that and look, again, just an hour before kickoff. But sometimes there's kind of dominoes that start dropping. You buy one transfer and then that kicks off another 5 transfers. And someone might come in for one of your players. That means they're unsettled. They leave at the last minute. You've got to try and react to that. The other thing is the other sides, if they get big injuries on the Saturday or on the Sunday, they've got time to react to it and bring people in, whereas we haven't.
That's an excellent point. That's something I've not considered, but yeah, they're given a slight head start for that last couple of days of madness, where they have a better idea of what they're needing. So that does put us at a disadvantage. I mean, I think the way Sunderland are ran, it's not like old school football managers who pick the team, buy the players and what have you. Lebris will have an involvement in transfers, but I dare say at the start of Monday he could say, these were the players I'd have no objection to leaving, and these are the players who, if you bring them in, I can work with them. And then he'll probably spend the rest of the day setting up for the Burnley match and leave it to Gasolfi or Speakman or whoever. But it does leave us at a disadvantage. I can only imagine that it's been moved to the Monday, because Otherwise, it would fall on a weekend. And I don't know if we're still dictated by like old school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything's closed on a Sunday. The banks aren't open. Blah blah blah. You can't get hold of a decent interpreter or solicitor to check the contracts off.
The fax machines are broke.
Exactly. The fax machines are having a Sunday roast down at the Queen Vic or something. But another thing as well, I wonder if Sky are happy, because I'm assuming it's Sky we're on Monday night. They're not going to be best. They'd probably rather the transfer window shut on a day when there was no games, because then they can do the big Sky Sports news and get all of the attention on that. Whereas a lot of viewers might even, because they were sitting down to watch some football, they might not even realise that the deadline's passed.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure whether it really should be allowed, this sort of thing, but then again, we wouldn't care if we hadn't been moved to the Monday, and we've just maybe been unlucky in this case. But yeah, so let's kind of get into it, because look, so far, and look, let's kind of peek behind the curtain. We are recording this, and I have to think about what day it is now, but we are recording this on Wednesday, so when you listen to this, it could well be outdated that Sunderland have spent 50 million in the time after we've recorded to the time that this pod comes out. So we are going off what we've got at the minute, because so far Sunderland have only signed Tarby. And going out, we've got Pembele has gone out to Le Havre, Arthur Masuaku's gone out to Lens, Blondie's gone to Boulogne, Jay Matete has gone out, and of course the big one, which we talked about the other day in terms of profile anyway, I suppose, was Dan Neil going to Ipswich on loan. So there's lots of rumours going around as well. I'm sure we'll do a news roundup as well before the week's out as well, to cover a lot of those rumours going on. But we'll go through position by position and go through what the latest is and what we think might happen and how it might play out. And Ant, we'll start with the goalkeepers, because there was an absolutely ridiculous rumour about Robin Roofs, which I'm not sure we'll even give the time of day to. And we'll just ignore that one, because as well, Premier League club as well, but we'll ignore that one for now. But Blondie's gone out to Boulogne. That's a keeper out. If Patterson does go out, and we've had big talks apparently with and we've lost out on a goalkeeper who we were linked with. But if Patterson does go out, and look, I think for the club, they want to look after the players. So I would say that the club is actually actively looking to get Patterson a move, just to be fair to him, because he wants first team football. But if he does go, he's only going to be allowed to leave if we get someone in. Surely we wouldn't go the rest of the season with just Simon Moore as a backup.
No, it would probably be foolish. In all due respect to Simon Moore, because I think he's a really good lad, and he's actually quite a good goalkeeper. But that would be foolish, just because if Russ gets injured, we haven't got anyone, have we? We've got a young lad from the under-23s or the 18s. So yeah, I would imagine that they're going to be thinking about either we bring someone in and then let Pat go on loan, or another one, I suppose, is they could recall Matty Young, but I don't think that'll happen because he's doing well down at Salford. So yeah, I think we've got to get somebody in first regarding that. We've lost out on that lad, haven't we, during the week? He's gone Leverkusen, hasn't he? So I would imagine they're looking at it. So we lost out on a few goalkeepers before we got Robin Ross, didn't we? So probably a good thing, to be fair as well, that we lost out on them goalkeepers. But I think there'll be someone that'll be sitting on the bench somewhere who's happy to come here. And then I can imagine that's probably one that will be over the weekend, possibly on Monday, that'll happen.
Yeah, and that Jonas Omlin one, Andrew's just reminded us of the name because I'd completely forgotten. Thank you very much for that, mate. But Bayer Leverkusen came in to buy him, and again, just with those links, Andrew, with Anthony Patterson, the biggest ones have been Millwall and Stoke. Apparently, are the two leaders in that chase for Anthony Patterson for the rest of the season. But how do you see that? Because we were talking about where Dan Neil's gone. How would you see that as a move for Anthony Patterson? Is it just, going back to what he knows just to get some sharpness again?
Yeah, because forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't think Stoke are up near the top, are they? I know Millwall are doing well this season, and they're in the promotion push, but I feel as if Stoke have been a bit hitty-missy. And for me, Patterson could probably expect to do better higher up the table. I mean, apologies. I can't imagine there's many Stoke fans tuning into this, but apologies if I've got that wrong. I think for Patterson, because of his contract status, it's slightly different to Dan Neil. If he was to go out on a loan, it might not necessarily be the end of his time here. It might just be a case of keeping him fresh, getting him games. And very kindly there, none of us know our own answers, but in this chat at the side of the record, we're sending each other messages with names of players and said Stoke a 10th. So
who looks at the Championship now when you don't need to? I mean, who takes notice of it now? Yeah, Stoke are only 2 points behind the playoffs, which I'm actually surprised at, to be honest, with Stoke City. But it is tight, of course. So there's only 5 points separating 6th down to 13th in the Championship, as usual.
Oh, well.
But again, let's say Patterson does go and we need a sub-keeper, so we're trying to be fair to Patterson whilst looking after the club. Roofs and Patterson are 2 quality goalkeepers to have as your number one and your understudy. Who's going to come in with that sort of quality? Who's going to be happy just to say, well, Roofs is number one and I'm just going to watch him for the rest of the season?
Unfreeze League Camp. In fact, actually don't.
You keep dropping things on people's toes on the bench and cause some injuries there, I think.
It was a January signing, League Camp.
Oh, come on. Right.
That's why we can't remember January.
That's why we don't remember January.
That's why we're trying to forget January transfer windows.
No, you're right. And obviously this Jonas Omlin, it was meant to be coming in, was pretty much a second choice goalkeeper, happy to come and be a second choice goalkeeper. So, you've got that one, and that's going to be what is difficult, is whether they're looking at thinking we are going to need someone to sit on the bench, whether he's happy to. Teams aren't going to let goalkeepers go out who aren't going to be playing. So it is going to have to be maybe someone plucked from somewhere who is happy just to come and sit on the bench. And it is a strange one. And it leads me to kind of think we'll probably keep Pato. Because I think obviously with the Omlin one, if that had come in, he'd have probably gone by now. I just think we'll end up now over the weekend. I think we'll probably keep him. I think it's just a bit more. I think it's more safe than something happening. Rolf's getting injured, and then we're stuck. So I think it's. I think it probably will be Patterson.
Yeah, you see that as well, Andrew?
Yeah, I was just going to say their famous last words, but it seems as if those stories have now gone quiet. I feel as if there was a lot of momentum behind the Patterson rumours the week previous, whereas now it has gone a little bit quiet. And as Ant says, it might have been a case of Patterson was all lined up to go and it was just going to be given the sign-off as and when Omlin joined us. But since Omlin went a different route, signed for a different club, I don't even think we've seen any names out there being linked with us. So perhaps the club were happy to do it for the right individual, but because Omlin fancied it elsewhere, we've just thought, no, we are better sticking with what we've got, and we know everything about Patterson. We can rely on him if he needs to come into the starting team.
Yeah, and just to book that conversation, Andrew, that you can't see us just letting Patterson go and risking it with Simon Moore.
No, I'd be really, really shocked if that was the route they took. Simon Moore, by all accounts, is a really important figure behind the scenes, but in terms of match day and playing, I think Patterson would be the better bet, and to have no other backup there would just leave us vulnerable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a situation with a goalkeeper. So I think we're in agreement that if Patterson doesn't go, then we're not bringing anyone in, and that's the only scenario that will go on there. So let's move on to the defence. Of course, we've had a couple of players leave. So the Pembele, who wasn't really in the picture anyway, has left. Masuaku has left as well. It was interesting to note that Alexic had to come back in on loan, had to come back in from loan, so Masuaku could go out because technically that's a loan, I think, until the end of the season. But looking at that defensive setup, we've got Michele, Ballard, Alderete, O'Nien, Gatrauda, that's kind of that's 5 players there who can play in central defence if required. So you'd think we're okay there. At fullback, on the right, we've got Michele, Hume, and Gacharda who can play there. So you've got 3 options there. So you would think we're covered there. On the left, with Masuaku going, Ronaldo and Serkin, and we've got those 2. And what do you think is the situation with Serkin's contract? Because like Dan Neil, he was out of contract and he's gone on loan from somewhere until the end of the season and his contract runs out. Could we see something maybe similar happening? If Serkin's not going to sign a contract, how are we going to look at that?
Yeah, I'm quite worried about it because I really want Serkin to sign a contract because I think Serkin's shown enough to suggest that he's a Premier League player. I really do. I think he's done really well when he came in. So whether I see it, I don't know. I think I can probably see it happening now. Maybe not be in January or something like that, but possibly depending on if he stays injury free at the end of the season. I think the club, it might be a one where they're actually just quite happy to see what happens with him and then see what happens in the summer and he might sign a deal. You've got to remember with Serkin, we signed him for peanuts anyway. He's not our player as in a homegrown player. So for PSR, it probably makes very, very little difference with Serkin. So whereas with Dan Neil, because he's a homegrown player, we would get a fee anyway, won't we? So with that, I think they're probably a little bit more like erring on the side of we'll see what happens. Because I think he's done really well. He covered for Ronaldo really, like probably more better than what I expected, to be honest. Especially when he played against City, I thought he was outstanding. Had a really good FA Cup game, so he's there now. That's the one I'd love to see him sign a contract because I've got to be honest, I think he's a good lad, he's a good player. It just makes a lot of sense, and he's a very good cover for Ronaldo, who's obviously the number 1 left back. But you've got to be thinking maybe in the summer that's somewhere where we look at because obviously he's not getting younger. He needs someone else to come in, but that's for the summer. But yeah, I'm happy with them too. And like I say, I think the club are a little bit more happier with seeing what happens with Serkin until the end of the season.
Yeah, Ronaldo looked 10 years older as well, playing against Jared Bourne, unfortunately, last weekend. But Andrew, that left back position is an odd one. Like I said, Ronaldo, you probably expect him to spend at least some time out with suspensions, probably before the season's out, with the way he sometimes goes on. But we've got Dennis Serkin, as we said, as understudy. He's still only 23, I think. I'm not sure if he's had a birthday, but I think he's only 23. Out of contract at the end of the season. There's potentially clubs who might come in for him and say, do you want first team football for the rest of the season? And I think part of the Dan Neil move was to put himself in the shop window for that big move and almost try and prove that he can play at the highest level and get the best contract in his next contract that he can possibly get. And also hanging around, you've of course got Leo Hjelde, who's still hanging around, who can maybe potentially leave and look for first team football. And I can't remember what the situation with Adji Elise is in terms of his fitness and whether he's completely injured at the moment or not. So I can't remember that. But how do you see that left back position?
Well, just on Elise, before I forget, he played a fair chunk of the under-21s game on Monday night. I want to say 65, 70 minutes. And I think he'd played 45 minutes for them a couple of games prior. So he's probably getting towards the end of his rehab. I think Masuaku was obviously just bought as a backup until we knew what was going to happen with Serkin. Serkin is now fully fit. We took real care getting him back up to match sharpness. But give him his dues, the games he's played, he's looked comfortable at this higher level. So there's no point keeping Masuaku about because Serkin's here now, and we can probably afford to wait until the summer to see if we need to replace him. Because I think Masuaku only had a short contract. Serkin's contract's coming to an end. So we were going to be in this situation in the summer regardless. The only difference now is we can be a bit more confident in Serkin in the meantime. I don't think there's much point in Serkin moving on because he has had some games. Dan Neil was barely getting a look in So for him to move on and potentially do well in the second half of the season does make sense, because, as you say, that then gives him a stronger hand when it comes to the summer negotiations. But whether Sirkin plays in the next few months or not, I think he has done enough. He's already got a good reputation in the Championship. So there's no need for him to move. The types of clubs who are going to be after him now, as we've said, would potentially only be clubs who are struggling or desperate. It just works for everybody now. If Sirkin gets a couple of games for us, great. You're probably right in that he'll get a chance, because Ronaldo will either need a break or get himself sent off again. So he will get a few games for us, and then in the summer, we're all then able to look at the bigger picture. He probably, I get the feeling he would have no problem staying at Sunderland. I think he likes it here. But in the summer, his options, if he is to move on, are probably going to be a lot better than between now and Monday night.
Yeah, and I think that fullback position is one to look out for the summer, I think. But let's move on to the midfield positions, and I'll start off with the middle of the park, obviously, because one of the big ones is Dan Neil leaving for the rest of the season to go to Ipswich Town. Looking at it just on paper, the options there: Granit Xhaka, Siddiqui, Diarra, Chris Rigg, and Enzo Lafay. Assuming that we play with a 3 for the majority of the time. Hetrauda can also step into that midfield position. So let's say that's 6 options. And a lot of people have been calling for us to bring in a central midfield player because Dan Neil's left. Do you think we need one when we've got those 6 options for, let's say, 3 positions?
No, I don't. To be honest, if Xhaka's injury was long-term, as in, like end of season stuff, I'd be saying probably yeah. But obviously he's due back. Fingers crossed after the Burnley game. I think they're going to reassess him, aren't they? But I like what they're doing, just giving him a rest and seeing what happens, see if it'll just solve itself on his own. But we've got Habib Diarra to come back in, who we've barely seen, have we? And we spent a lot of money on him. He's our record signing, so we've got him to come in. As you said before, Trout can play there. Trey Humes obviously played there against West Ham, not brilliantly, but Trey Humes will have better games there. So I think we're all right in the middle. I can't. There's no point us bringing someone in and then that someone's going to relegate Chris Rigg to be in the Dan Neil spot. I just don't see that at all. I think they've got. You can see why Chris Rigg hasn't gone out on loan yet, because they've got high hopes for him. I think a season him learning under the likes of Granit Xhaka and stuff like that will be great for his development. So I can't see us doing any business there, man.
Yeah. Well, Diarra, like you said, Diarra will be like having a new signing in January. But Andrew, it does feel like Regis Labris doesn't necessarily completely, and I don't want to say trust, but let's just say he might not want to throw Chris Rigg into the middle of the park in the Premier League all of the time. I think quite often when he's played, it's been out wide. So if you take him out of the equation as almost an emergency player in the middle of the park, that does leave you with those 5 players for, let's say, those 3 positions. I mean, is that enough? Because there has been at times where we've questioned whether people need a break or people need to come out, and we're going into the second half of the season, the business end. Is that enough? Do you think that they might be looking for one more body in there?
I think it'll be one of those where they're not desperately searching out anybody. And if it doesn't happen, they're not going to lose any sleep. I think this is one of the areas where if somebody pops up that it is right and it can be done now, they'll go for it. I just wonder at the moment who we could bring in that would be as good as the options we've got, but be fine to not be a starter. Like Ant says, yeah, Chris Rigg, if you bring in one for the future, you're then just pushing Chris Rigg down the pecking order. So you'd be assuming it would be somebody more established. I can't think of a name. Guendouzi made a lot of sense to me, and I really did think that was going to happen. And then it just went quiet, and he's moved elsewhere. Other than that, though, I can't think of many names who would be good enough to do a job right now, but also be willing to sign for a club where the options are so strong.
Well, that's why I will never ask any of you who do you think will sign to give me a name, because when it comes to Sunderland, we've always never heard of them when they do come in. So other than Guendouzi, of course, but he was a one-off. But Ant, let's go to the wide positions because you've got Talby, Adingra, Mundell, Traore. Tarby's, of course, come in. Chris Rigg, of course, like I've just said, can play out wide. Enzo Lefebvre can play out wide as well. So you've got different options there. Traore, of course, is injured for a bit longer. But you'd think with all of those names, all young lads, well, apart from Traore as well, giving them game time is the priority there, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And to be fair, when you mentioned that, all those young lads, except from Traore is probably the one we miss at the moment.
Yeah.
Just his little bits of getting us from one end to the other is quite good. But no, again, that's why I've said, obviously, earlier on, I don't think we'll be busy, because it's another one where I don't see where, especially in January, where we desperately don't need a winger, really, do we? Again, had it been a long-term injury to Traore, you maybe thought, look at it, but then they've brought that Tarby in, who I think they're going to take the time with, aren't they? Pretty much said that he's going to start training next week, and then, see what he's like. So he's probably someone I think will probably get minutes here and there. But then you've got, on the right, you've got, as I said, probably Traore is the favourite when he's fit, but Elijah Mayenda's been playing there, hasn't he? We've got Talby, who can play either side. Simon Adingra, who can play either side. I think I prefer Adingra on the left, but he's the one, I think, where should a big bid come in for him, I wouldn't be shocked if he leaves. I've got to be honest. I wouldn't be shocked if a bid came in for him, because I just don't think he's done it so far for us. He had a really good opportunity during AFCON, where he got dropped in AFCON, started really well against Leeds with that goal, and then just completely tailed off, didn't he? And that's probably the one where you look at long term. Is he going to be here next season? I'm not sure. It could have turned out well, and he could just, obviously have a new lease of life and play really well for now at the end of the season. But I think long term, the summer, that might be one we're looking at, and maybe that is when we're going to be bringing the winger in. But as far as now, I think we're fine.
Yeah. What do you think, Andrew, in those wide positions? Because like I say, a lot of names, and we have mixed and matched with all of them at certain times. None of them have really nailed down a position. As Ant said, Traore was probably the one who maybe impressed the most once he got fit and looked the most comfortable. But none of the others have really cemented their place, have they?
No, I think you're right. There's plenty of names there who could play these positions, but nobody has really grabbed the shirt and made it their own. When you're talking about defence and central midfield, I was along the lines of it'll not be something we are pushing. Whereas I think these positions further up the pitch, I feel this is where the club are going to be a bit more proactive. And if they are going to be pushing a deal, it will be either a forward or a winger, because those are the areas that nobody's quite nailed down a position. Whenever we do previews, Chris, we almost just quickly rattle through, Roofs, no question. Back four, no question. Who's in the middle three? It's usually the same names. It's only ever when we start talking about the wide players that we start getting into a bit of a debate, and you might fancy Mayenda, whereas Gav or Johnny might think, no, it needs to be Mundell. I don't know. But that says to me that there's question marks. And if we're thinking that, the club will be thinking that as well. And just on Adingra, we clearly pursued him for a long time and we really wanted him. But am I right in thinking, or was this just a bizarre fever dream? Wasn't he being linked with a couple of top European clubs last
Juventus,
week?
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Juventus.
I mean, if selling somebody like that gives us the headroom to spend more in the future, I think the club would be happy enough to do that. Adingra might come good, but he might not come good. So yeah, if there's hard money on the table and that gives us a bit more manoeuvrability, I wouldn't be surprised.
Just quickly, Andrew, with the rumours about Mundell, can you see him staying beyond the window closing?
I can see him staying, but again, it's one of those where the club won't be touting him around and pushing him out the door. But if something materialises, I think the club wouldn't be dead against him moving on. He's worked hard for us, but his end product perhaps isn't quite there yet. So they'd potentially be open to it.
Just quickly, Ant, with the options we've got, let's say a Romain Mundell does leave, or even we're surprised and someone comes in for a dinger or something like that and one of them leaves. Do you think we'd have to react and bring another body in?
I would assume so, especially because it's out on the left and we'd only have Talby, wouldn't we? So I would probably assume so. I'd probably think that'd be something to bring in. As a player, and you know what you said before, you don't want to like mention, names or anything like that. But how good would Jack Clark be in our system now? How good would he be? And what would the style of football we play? Jack Clark, get him back. But I just think he'd be outstanding in our system now. Grafts up and down is what he did. Scores goals. Yeah, cheeky bit.
The first name I've had today, so there you go. You heard it here first. But I'll start with you on the front players, and because I think this is one of the big ones. Look, we've got Brian Brobby who's making that position his own up top. Behind him, we've of course got Wilson Isidore, who doesn't seem happy. If I'm completely honest, I think there's a lot of potentially a lot of truth in all of these rumours, and I think his agent is working overtime. And then you've got the links with Mayenda going to Paris FC, who of course got Red Bull involvement there and have got a bit of money behind them there. And Mayenda being 20, of course you want to try and give him as much game time as possible, but of course it's difficult, especially after performances like the West Ham one. But how do you see that playing out? Because I saw in the press conference last week, Regis Lebris was talking about saying he thought he had the perfect setup with the three he's got up top. So surely you would think if any of those bodies left, we'd have to get people in.
Yeah, I actually think Wilson Isidore leave in January. I think that'll be the one. If they're thinking of someone who is going to be going, and as you said before, there's no smoke without fire, is there? He was linked with Paris last week. He was linked with Besiktas this week. Yeah, that's it. You've probably got us up your train of thought there. There we go. I'll come back.
You said no smoke without fire, dry ice.
Dry ice. Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be something that we'll have to act on because, it was the same with Broby's obviously number one now. Number one striker for us. But we've seen, he's come off sometimes with a hamstring strain or whatever. He cramps up quite quickly, doesn't he? He's still not. I still don't think we've got 100% fit Brian Brobby yet. And when we do get him, he'd be an absolute monster. So I think we probably would have to look at a striker then if Wilson Isidore goes. I think the Mayenda stuff, I think that's just completely not a bollocks, to be honest. I don't think Paris FC will spend 25 million on him. And I don't think we'd sell him. And I actually think he's worth more than that, I've got to be honest. I think he's got so much of potential. I think his ceiling is so high that I would be absolutely devastated if he left in the window. And I think with that, it'll be, for us, thinking it'd be too much panicky. And I don't think we particularly need that money. If the money came in for Isidore, 15 million, 20 million or something, for a player who's, not young, he's obviously not old, but he's, in a decent part of his career, I can see the potential in that, but I can't see the potential in Elias Mayenda going.
But just quickly, Ant, in response to that, how does that conversation go with Mayenda? Because like I said, he's 2021. He's come off the back of a brilliant season, scoring at Wembley. And, he hasn't scored since the opening day, and he's only getting bits and pieces here and there. He doesn't look like someone who's very happy at the moment.
Wait, he never looks very happy, does he? I don't think I've ever... the only time I've seen him smile was modelling Nyron Nosworthy's shirt and the vintage stuff this week. You know what I mean? He doesn't smile very often. I don't know. You'd have to ask, obviously. But again, you've kind of mentioned the thing there. He's 21. He's a young player. You got to remember, 2 years ago, he was playing for Hibs reserves. He's transformation has been brilliant for us all to see. And yes, he's probably not getting enough games what he thinks of there, but I just can't see us accepting a bid for someone who I do think very, very highly of. For me, I just don't think it makes very good business at all, Chris. I've got to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. Well, according to Spanish journalist Matteo Moreto, the French top flight club Paris FC were negotiating with Sunderland for Mayenda, so we'll see how that one plays out. But Andrew, what's your thoughts on that front positions with those three? Because with Brian Brobby's form and how he's done, the other two, I kind of think, well, am I happy just sitting on the bench for the rest of the season?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because we invariably do play one traditional striker. And if we do go 4-4-2, it'll often be Lefebvre that's pushed up. So I can fully understand why players would be thinking, have I got a chance here? I'm devastated, by the way. Ant just reminded me there that Nyron Nosworthy is old enough to be considered part of like the classics range in the club shop. I think I can't remember who the other players were on those T-shirts, but when I saw them being advertised, I thought, hang on, they were only playing a couple of years ago, weren't they? Flipping heck. So yeah, and also you mentioning dry ice, Chris, has taken me completely off piece because I'm just remembering Pizzazz dance floor like on a seedy student night out now. So I've completely lost interest in Sunderland's transfer window, which is not good for the pod. Like, but yeah,
your moves, Andrew. Honestly, I would. I'd imagine you being a robot. Like,
well, that's why I needed the dry ice. I would hide behind the dry ice, so nobody would see the dodgy me cutting some dodgy shapes. Yeah, back on track. Sorry, boys. Isidore, like you have suggested there, you do get the feeling that he perhaps is not pushing for a move, but he's maybe made it known to his representatives, listen, I'd consider offers. Because he hasn't been himself of late. He's gone a fair while without a goal. I know he's always kind of scored in flurries for us, but he might want to consider his options. Sunderland have always been good at keeping their business close to their chest and keeping under wraps. So there's part of me thinks, is it too late to allow Isidore to go? Is it too late if something materialises for Mayenda? For all we know, there might be somebody waiting in the wings, and it's virtually signed and sealed, but we haven't dotted the I's and crossed the T's. So yeah, the wingers and the forwards, they're the positions where I'm assuming we will see business. If Isidore stays, I've got no problem. I think he still can do a job for us. But the types of figures being bandied around, Sunderland might well think they can get somebody in who'll be more getting more minutes and more productive for us.
Yeah, well, sorry, Andrew. I was lost in a haze of Wednesday night and Annabelle's 70s nights, which I couldn't. I was struggling to listen to you through memories of all of that nonsense. But yeah, getting back into it. So yeah, but it'd be interesting to see if those two leave because we may have to react late in the day. So kind of going back through it, I think. So and is what we're saying is like, with the players and the options that we've got, we're looking at the squad as it stands, because as we went through it, we're basically saying that the only way we'll bring people in is if we're reacting to people going, because looking at some of the media's comments, they seem big in the fact that Sunderland are trying to get more firepower in, up top and in that final third.
Yeah, I actually think that. I think it's a reaction thing, because I think we did our best business and our important business in January and August. Bringing all these players in. We signed a lot of players, Chris. You've got to remember that. Majority of them have worked out brilliantly. We're still to see, as said, the best of Diarra. I think he'll come really good in the second half of the season. And I think you've got to put on, and I've had a few conversations with mates and stuff during the week, obviously regarding the West Ham game, which wasn't good enough. And a couple of people say, well, I think we've missed the boat now. I was missed the boat on what? About possible European football. It's like, well, the start of the season would have been happy to finish 17th, and I think you've got to kind of take your red and white glasses off sometimes and just think, we're 11th in the table. We're like still 3 points off 7th or whatever it is. It would joint 8th or whatever it is. And it's like, I think sometimes you just got to maybe take a back seat and look at this score. It's good enough to stay up, definitely. If they'll see what happens. And I think if the right signing comes along for them in the next 5 days, 6 days, or whatever it is, then they'll do it. But I don't think it's something where we need to be active in January. I don't think it's ever been the case. Had it been, had it been 3 or 4 injuries or someone leaving or whatever like that, then yes, I think we would have been busy. But the fact, I think Regis is happy with the squad. He's happy with the balance of the squad. He's happy with what we've got. If a couple of players go, then that's, that is what it is. And then we'll probably look at bringing something like 1 or 2 in. But for me, our big business will be in the summer. So sorry for wasting everyone's time the last hour.
Well, as long as we've methodically gone through it. But Andrew, just looking at actually Kirill Louis Dreyfus's comments way back when, I think it was before, I can't remember if it was before the Arsenal or the Everton game, but it was on Sky. Everton, yeah. And he then talked about saying whether, if we were in a good position, that they may push the boat out in the January transfer window to give us that boost that we might need to maybe achieve something big. And, we've got Oxford in the next round of the Cup. We could be looking at potentially a decent run in the Cup, depending on how the draw goes. We'll see, or how the game against Oxford goes, touch wood and all that. But yeah, so we've got that potential to push. Now, do you think we're likely to do that? Or do you think now we've said, look, we've got this squad and we'll give some of these players more game time in preparation for next season, maybe?
I think we're in a very rare position where, if something is there, we might very well make an impact signing, like a big headline grabbing signing. And I think that's what Louis Dreyfus was alluding to. There'll be conversations and there will have been inquiries going in behind the scenes, but as I mentioned earlier, we just haven't necessarily found out about them. There's so many moving parts in transfers. It won't, if we don't sign anybody else, it won't be because we've just sat there with our, fingers in our ears or picking our noses or whatever. The club will have tried to make things work. But I just think it's just such a lovely conversation to have this year, and it's such a nice situation to be in, where that if signings are made, we can be fairly confident that they're being made for the right reasons and that the players want to be here. There's going to be no desperation signings. There's going to be nobody just landing at the Academy of Light because we've thrown obscene amounts of money at them as like a kind of desperate measure. Anybody we sell, it'll be because it works for the squad. It's not because we've got a load of bad eggs we've got to ship out. It's not because we're in money troubles and we're just going to be selling the family silver to keep our heads above water. Whatever moves happen in the next few days, would all love us to go and get a massive Fabrizio Romano, here we go, and we're signing some absolute top class player. Would be over the moon, but we don't need it. And whatever happens, I'm enjoying being in this fairly relaxed mood and just happy to see what happens, take it as it comes, and just let the club do what they've done consistently, which is operate well in the transfer market and use transfer windows to move the club on.
I thought you were telling us about Fabrizio Romano, who was his long-lost cousin or something, who told us about transfers on a different platform or something like that. I thought it was missing a trick.
I think Fabrizio Romano was a DJ at Annabelle's, wasn't he?
Go away.
But yeah, anyway, so in summary, the lads think Sunderland could be pretty boring in the ramp up to the transfer window closing.
Isn't it nice? Isn't it nice?
So I would, if anyone can, I'd go out and put some money on us spending about 50-60 million in the last few days. But anyway, that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Ant.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, everyone.
And thanks again for that backdrop, by the way. And we've had the dogs all the way through, which has been fantastic. Nice little backdrop to the pod.
It's probably been the most stressful hour of my life recording. I'm not going to lie. Hopefully, it's not too much background noise. I do apologise. They're normally as good as gold. They are, but today they've been an absolute nightmare. No, so I am very, very sorry.
No, it's been brilliant working out when it was you talking or when it was the dog. So it was hard to tell at times, mate. But anyway, thanks for your time, Andrew. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed that one.
And actually, you talked about Nylon being vintage now. Talked about 20 years ago. That was like when we were watching Mick Buxton's side and then bringing T-shirts out of the FA Cup winning side, which is a depressing thought.
That is a depressing thought. I've just looked at the club shop there. One of the other T-shirts was Kenwyn Jones. So yeah, that's like you say, completely different eras.
Like a fine wine.
Vintage. But anyway, thank you very much, gents. And thanks again for everyone for listening. Don't forget, we'll have loads more on the Roker Report website and How We're the podcast every day, of course, as we look forward to the clash with Burnley and hopefully some reaction to massive signings that Ant and Andrew haven't predicted. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.